So Alexa, why is basketball your ministry?
That's a great question, David. I feel like basketball is my ministry because I was fortunate enough to be mentored by some really great people, male and female, in my formative years. I mean, I grew up in a time girls were encouraged to play athletics, but nowhere like it is today. I remember my grandmother telling me stories about she got reprimanded by the neighbor because she was dribbling a basketball in her yard. And she told her that girls don't dribble basketball. So let me move that real quick. So she, that's not where I grew up, but we weren't far from that. And so as I got older, honestly, you don't really know what you have sometimes until you're around others who didn't have it. So I felt like everyone had the opportunity to play these sports, and they were surrounded by men and women who supported their goals and loved on them and, helped them work and taught them fundamentals. And when I got into the older years, basically in college, you started to learn that, it wasn't like that for everyone. And then, things just seemed to fall into place pretty easily for me. I coached, I started coaching when I was 16. I coached a little youth basketball. And then as I got into college, we would coach some AAU teams. So it was always a part of my life. My sister is 12 years younger than I am. So I coached her teams a lot, and it was a family thing. So it just felt like that's what you were supposed to do. I don't really think I understood the ministry until I left home completely. And I mean, move out of Texas. I'm from Texas. And when I was 27, I moved here to Charleston. And it was the first time that I didn't have my normal network and, oh yes, you're going to coach this, you're going to do this. And, I was kind of on my own, and my time was my own for the first time in a long time. So in the beginning, I enjoyed the freedom of doing whatever I wanted to do. But quickly, you get bored when you're used to a structure. And I always felt like something was missing. So fortunately, I met some really great people here that needed help. I think it was right place, right time. I think, it's all in God's time, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And at the time I was connected with some people who put me, first it was at a local high school, and then they wanted me to help in a junior high. And I grew up in a junior high system where, we had coaches that went to school to coach, and they were a teacher at the school, and you rode a bus, and you got a school issued uniform, and you practiced every day for 2 hours, and you had tournaments. And so I didn't understand the culture here. I didn't understand that a lot of times a school didn't have a team unless a parent or a grandparent or a mom or a dad or a brother or sister volunteered to coach. So once I was able to do that and realize what do you mean I can coach 8th grade? Isn't there a real coach? Don't they have a real, don't they ride a bus? Don't they do that? It was just a different environment. So when that happened, I realized, you're not going to be able to run from this. This is your opportunity to give back. And quite honestly, most of the time it was when I was at my happiest, because once I realized that not everyone has, and I know this sounds silly, but once I realized not everyone has the opportunities that I had, I considered it an honor and a privilege to do what God wanted me to do and be that for these young ladies, because without that, the structure isn't there here in this current situation here for that opportunity. So, I think that's why I felt called. Once I got here, I realized, I had my little free time, and it just, once he calls you, you can only run so long. So I think that was it. And I've just been doing it ever since. And then I drug my husband into it when we were dating, and now it's team on 3.
Yeah, I love it. And so we love winning, all of us as basketball players, right? And but beyond the winning, what's the payoff for you with the people that you mentor? Like, what's the win beyond what happened on the court when you get to the end of the season? Because you've had a lot of players come across your desk, and then they evolve, and then you follow them as they get older, they move into high school. But when they finish the season, like your baby birds, they go away. But
yep.
What's the payoff at the end of the season that kind of keeps you motivated, whether you're winning or losing?
It's probably a cliche of most coaches. It's just the relationships. I think anybody that coach realizes that it's a small part X's and O's, but the truth of the matter is you're you're molding hearts and you're influencing hearts. And so I think our greatest joy, and I'll include Steve in this, is when, we're invited to a wedding, or we just got a baby announcement, from one of our former players. So aside from making you feel like you're 400 years old, those are the things that really matter the most, because you just want to know that you gave them something. You gave them one or two things. I think I love when a kid comes back and says, Coach, I always think about small things, because as you know, we love Mother Teresa's small things. So those are the moments to me that make it all worthwhile. Yes, you love to win. Yes, you're absolutely right. We love to win, and you love to dominate, and you love to walk in a gym and people think, oh, there's Christ our King. But the reality of it is, it's these relationships, and just knowing that I have a lot of those memories from coaches that have coached me. And so I just hope to give those girls that same thing. Because if I see those coaches to this day, I'll tell them, I remember when you did this. I remember when you did this. And I think to me, those are, oh, sorry.
Play through it. Play through it. Yeah.
Got a makeshift office here.
Yeah. Well, I think that the culture,
We're just going to do that.
I'm hearing your culture kind of like come through that. And culture, I think, is the most important part of what you're doing at the end of the year. And this Team B.E.S.T movement has been really fun to watch, because that's a culture. I mean, I've witnessed that culture, and thankfully I had the chance to watch one of my children run through it. But when did you get that vision of Team B.E.S.T? And at the end of the day, I feel like you've formalized everything that you've said here so far. You've formalized it, and I want to wrap it up better. I want to package it better, and it's been so much fun to watch. So when did you come up with the idea of Team B.E.S.T, and tell everybody a little bit about just what that is and how it's moved?
Okay. I can't take full credit for Team B.E.S.T. It is something that I always thought about when I first moved here, and I was thinking maybe I do need to coach. I called Columbia. I had coached AAU in Texas, so I called the Columbia office here, and never got anywhere. No one really returned my call. And I thought maybe they just don't do AAU here. Maybe that's not an opportunity. And, I scoped the local scene a little bit, and there really wasn't a lot, similar to, you've seen a burst of trainers on the scene and things have grown here. But when I first moved here 20 years ago, that was not there. So honestly, I was young. Now, it was probably old at the time. I felt old at the time. 27, it's a lot of work. I really wasn't in a place that I wasn't sure I was going to stay in Charleston. So I kind of put that to bed. Fast forward, you stay in the local scene, you see how it could benefit. There was a bunch of teams, but honestly, the teams were just there when a parent wanted to create that opportunity for their child, and then they moved on. And I don't blame them, but there was not a consistent team. So when Kobe Bryant passed, Debbie Antonelli, who's, kind of our local guru on all things women's basketball, Hall of Famer, national analyst, she said, we got to start a team. And she said she felt called to do that as well because of the work that Kobe had done for his daughter specifically.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, it was out of COVID. Our year was cut short. I think we played 6 games. The protocol made it really tough for people to follow and play alternate games. So it started in that summer. The crux of it was a little bit like it was always needed, but also we felt like it was a great way to keep our kids together. We ran a system, and you were a vital part of that. So thank you, David, called The Grind. And it was 2 days a week, 3 hours of working out. But as you and I discovered, I can't quite explain it, but in the beginning it would be crowded. And then by the end, you'd have 10 kids show up. And it always kind of baffled us because, it's very minimal price wise. Yeah. But it wasn't until we put games on the schedule and uniforms that it got taken a little more seriously. And our recognition was, hey, as long as they have a ball in their hand. Otherwise, most of them were not touching a basketball from the end of the state basketball tournament, parochial state tournament in February, until the next October. Yeah. So with Team B.E.S.T, we said, we'll keep the teams together. We'll let them play. I think we followed your lead when you took I think it was your son's team. You took them to a local tournament, and they can compete locally. I mean, Team B.E.S.T is not a ultra, competitive. We're not going to Tennessee and Atlanta and Charlotte and Texas. We're not playing in the big we're not playing a lot of big dogs. We're playing locally where we can compete and have some success as a school team. Now, pridefully, we do pretty well. People are surprised when they find out, wait a minute, this is a school team, so we do pride ourselves on that a little bit. But it actually started out, I'm thankful to Debbie as the crux. We got it going. I think now we have our, coaches ask me all the time, how do you have so many girls? But when it's tied to your school, it's pretty easy. We have our rising 5th graders, our rising 6th graders, or 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. However, I think this year we had 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and a 10th grade team. As long as these kids want to play, we're here. If we have to pull some kids from other schools, we're happy to, because I'm very big on growing the game. It doesn't do any of us any good if the level isn't improved. So if we can help, we help, but we also have an obligation to help our kids get better that are part of our program. So that's really how it started. And we're able to sustain it just with the interest in keeping costs minimal and people loving to play games. They like to train, but they love to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting that what you talked about with the evolution of a summer. Summer's a really hard time just to have any sort of a schedule. But it was interesting, the kids that would stay through the whole thing, and it kind of rolls out to what life you might see, even in your corporate job and my job, is that there's a top 10% or a top 20% of people that will keep going to the gym every day. They want to develop themselves. They want to grow. And it's okay if maybe a child's sport favorite doesn't turn out to be basketball. Like maybe they're doing the same thing in their soccer life, or maybe they're doing a thing in their lacrosse life or volleyball. But it is interesting to watch that change. And so I'm sure in the course of that whole thing, you've had a couple of failures, a couple of things that you wrote up on paper that said, this is going to be great for this B.E.S.T program. So can you share with us maybe like your top surprise, your top thing that you said, yep, I missed that. I could have done that differently.
So it's funny you bring that up, because Steve and I often joke that if we were going to take a next step, we would change the name of the program to Team Second Best. And we would be people's second or third best sport.
Yeah.
Because one problem that we had, which is not a terrible problem, but Team B.E.S.T was created so that you could do your other things. Yeah. Because it seems in the club culture across the board. I mean, I have 2 children. One is of the club age right now. And I mean, the culture is to silo and get you cut off from the rest of the world as quickly as possible. Whether they think that's what they're doing or not, that's what they're doing. It's like, I'm going to pick on soccer, although I do love soccer. Okay, we finished the outdoor season. Well, are you playing indoor? Did you go to private training? And every sport is the same. And unfortunately, we've learned to you got to find the right coaches that support the mission. So one negative was, teams were too big. Yeah. So we would allow a lot of people to play because we assumed they would pick their other sports or there would be conflicts. And then there wasn't conflicts. And then you have 15 kids on a team. And that's not really good for anybody. And then as a director, I would feel terrible because the whole purpose is you're spending this money so you can get better. So that was one negative. We've been blessed with some really, really good coaches. It's not been a negative yet, but I'm always fearful when the coaches decide they don't want to do it anymore, because it's a huge time commitment. We keep costs relatively low. So we're not talking about people that make, a bunch of money in the summer. We're talking about, we have coaches that love the game and are okay giving their time, and we give them a little bit basically to make it worthy for, we pay for their travel. We pay for enough for gas and a little something extra. So it hasn't become a huge problem yet, but I always worry because it's, people forget that this is people's time. And we're not a program that's, going to Atlanta or Charlotte. So we're not going after, fees would look a lot different if we did that. And then, I think probably those would be the 2 main. One is not quite happened yet, but I always worry about it. And the biggest negative for me has been team size and people getting turned off to it because they bought in for the right reasons, and then we had too high of a number. So we have learned along the way, to customize our teams and our numbers, because that's kind of the worst thing, is getting them to keep their foot in the door, but then you slam it shut because there's too many of them.
Yeah. So you have all this experience with these kids and putting together these teams, and then also you were a player, and then you've coached all different grades, and then you've been there. It's funny you mentioned about the birth announcement. So you've evolved through this whole thing, and you've had all these different dynamics. So if you had to tell us, like, what's the big takeaway for somebody that really wants to either start an organization like this or build the right type of culture? Like, what's that first thing that somebody has to have before they're going to really focus on building a team culture? Because you've seen it, at the college level, you've seen it, been around Debbie and pro stuff. And I mean, you've seen it all. So what really is the big takeaway there that somebody's going to do if they want to create this positive culture or this positive team type of vibe?
I think you and I touched on it briefly off air. I think you just have to borrow Nike's term, you just have to do it. We drug our feet for a long time. It was a pipe dream. It was a lot of talk. Oh, what if we did this? What if we did this? But it scares you because there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of admin. There's a lot of, I don't want to say hurt feelings, but there's a lot of opinions, and ultimately somebody's got to do it. I think we were fortunate enough to be affiliated with the Christ our King and John Burns, the president, who would give us legs and would allow us to do things. But I think the biggest thing is if you see a need or it's been on your heart, you just have to go. You just have to go. And it's not going to be perfect. I had to learn that lesson too. I mean, I loved your question about the negative pitfalls. I'm sure there's some others when we get off this call. I'm going to think, oh yeah, there was this, because some days you do tell yourself, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, why am I getting yelled at?
Right.
I'm just trying to help. So you have to have some thick skin, and you have to say, I'm just doing this for the right reason. The main motivation for Steve and myself of continuing to do this is that even if there's 5 kids out of 70 that remember this, that use this, that learn something from it, that have, if this is the best basketball memory they have in their life, then I want it to be the best basketball memory, and I want it to be a core memory. Yeah. So we try to focus on, let's just make a core memory. And if we can't get all the kids, let's get 2 or 3, because I was given that opportunity. And so I feel like that's my motivation to stay involved and give those kids that opportunity. It's not going to help everybody. I mean, we did a survey this year for the first time, and there were some things that at the end of the survey, I was like, why am I doing this? That people they're upset about everything. Yeah. But I think that's just where we live. That's the culture we live. So my best advice would be, we heard a football coach, I think he was with the Jets. He said, Steve and I cracked up. He said, if you don't have any haters, then you ain't popping. So instead, that's what we're going to do. We're going to move forward, and people are going to hate, but if your heart's in the right place, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think it's always easy to try to give people just enough so they stay comfortable, but that's not really what you're trying to do. You're trying to push people. And when you push, you're going to get resistance, because not everybody pushes with the same level of drive and ambition, and not everybody wants the same thing. And some people know they don't want to take their game to the next level. They just are having fun, and that's fine too. But it's really interesting is that then when you're dealing with the kids in the moment, you see the payoff, and that's, I think, what keeps you going. They say in golf, you could hit a bunch of bad shots, but you hit that one good one, and it keeps you coming back for more.
Keeps you coming back. That's right.
That's the same thing. It's like the one kid that makes a great play, and you're like, wow, that kid they've been trying all season, but they never had a breakthrough. And then you see the breakthrough, and that's what feels good. So if you were going to build a team again today, knowing that we see this all the time, we see people organize and they say, oh, if we do this, we can make a lot of money. If we do this, we can create this training facility. We can do all that. At the end of the day, what do you just hope that you give that one player? What do you want that one player to get at the end of the season when they look back? And because they're not going to remember how many games you won and lost. We talk about this all the time. I can't remember hardly any of it, but what do you want that young player to take away from the experience with Team B.E.S.T?
That's a great question. We've built our entire program, Team B.E.S.T and the school, on Mother Teresa's "Be faithful in small things, because it is in them your strength lies." And I honestly feel like that's what I want their takeaway to be, because whether it's learning your jump shot, learning the footsteps for a layup, left, right, together, down, up, whatever it is, if you can remember that in your life, it will serve you well with your relationships with your husband, or whatever the case may be, in school. I just really think that was a valuable lesson for me to learn, because it keeps you from being overwhelmed. You just worry about your small thing. I can get up in the morning, I can brush my teeth, I can do my workout, I can spend time with God. I can, you just one step at a time, worry about the small things, because I do think, especially in this age of social media, these poor kids, like, thank the good Lord that was not around when I was around, when I was young.
No,
But I think they are overwhelmed with these perfect scenarios of every aspect of every person's life. And it's just, we also live in an age, we joke about this all the time, where, you can win, there's 27,000 World Series and everybody wins one. There's 20,000 basketball tournaments and everybody wins one. Every weekend you can see, like in soccer season, everybody's winning. I don't know. I guess no one's losing. And so I think, especially for them and growing up like this, they need, you got to keep your head down and focus on small things, because half of what you're seeing, probably 90% of what you're seeing, is not even real. You don't see the context. You don't see the hard work. You don't see anything. You just see the glory. So I think that would be that would be what I would hope the biggest takeaway is. Just remember that quote and rely on it the rest of your life.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for your hard work, because that work ethic and that prayer ethic and the hustle ethic, all that, I think it builds better people. And having positive mentors like you and Steve and the program that you've created, I think it really helps. So, well, guys, I'm with Alexa Harnig. She's not only a personal friend, but she and Steve are working really hard behind the scenes for this Team B.E.S.T. You can learn a lot about them. I'll put some information in the show notes. I think it's really cool to check out. And there's a lot of other cool videos that you can check out as well. So, Alexa, thank you for the time today. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank you. You
it's always
too.
good catching up with you.
Thank you for all you do, David.
Thanks. Bye.